Canada Summer School sessions. Today we're talking about ArcGIS Pro and diving into the new enhancements. My name is Maggie and I'm here with Emily to show you all that's new with ArcGIS Pro 3.0. In today's session, we're first going to be covering what is a major release. What does this mean and why was it necessary for ArcGIS Pro? So that's what we're going over first. Then we will discuss what you should know before taking the leap into ArcGIS Pro in your organization. And finally, we're going to take a look at some of the new changes that have been implemented in the software and show off some of our favorite new features. By the end of today's webinar, you will have all the information that you need to be prepared for this implementation of ArcGIS Pro 3.0 in your organization. We want to help you make good decisions and determine whether you and your organization are ready to make that move to 3.0. Since we're in summer school, we can't get away with no tests, so we have a pop quiz to get an idea of where people are coming from today. There's no wrong answers, a pretty easy question. We just want to know what version of the desktop software, so ArcGIS Pro, or if you're using it, ArcMap, are you currently using? And if you could just put your answers in the chat, we would like to see what responses we're getting from you there. So you should be able to just reply to all panelists and we can see your answers coming in. So I see that there are some people who are using ArcGIS Pro 2.9, 2.8. A couple of people have already started using 3. Lots of people on those later 2 versions. So that's great to see. You're definitely in the right spot if you're using those 2.789 versions and you're ready to make that move. We're going to show you what is coming today. So that's perfect. ArcMap users, we're also glad to see you in here as well, getting ready to make the move to ArcGIS Pro. It's great to see what's available. So we just want to make sure that you have those knowledge of what's coming. So that's perfect to see. You guys are all in the right place. And now I'm going to let Emily take over and talk to you a little bit more about what it means, what this major release means. What does that actual term mean and how is that going to impact you as a user?
Yeah, so since I see a lot in the chat are, still at the 2.8 or, within the 2.x major version, a lot of what I will cover in the next few slides will likely be applicable when you consider when or why it would be worthwhile making the upgrade to Pro 3.0, because there are some additional things to consider. So the biggest takeaway from today's presentation is that Pro 3.0 is considered a breaking change release. So the move to a major release is due to breaking changes, underlying breaking changes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a huge amount of new functionality. We will highlight a lot of the new and enhanced functions, but that is not necessarily the main reason why the product team has made that move to Pro 3.0. So the first reason why this is considered a breaking change release is that the main driver for this change is that ArcGIS Pro's framework is switching from the .NET Framework 4.8 to .NET 6, which was formerly called .NET Core. So the .NET 4.8 was going to be the last release. It's not going to be supported for much longer. So it was necessary for the team to make that move to .NET 6. That's going to ensure, better development environment for the product team and anyone else that is working within the development environment, just longer into the future. The second reason why this is considered a major release is because this switch over offered an opportunity to make the necessary API changes. Since the underlying framework was changed, the development team took the opportunity to refactor the Pro APIs for improved consistency, quality, and ease of use. So this just means that the team was able to clean house to remove classes and functions and replace them with something better at the ArcGIS Pro SDK at 3.0. And then finally, the last point and why this is considered a major breaking change release is that they took the opportunity to implement some functional performance and quality improvements that were just not possible while maintaining the compatibility with other minor versions at Pro 2.x. So for example, one of the enhancements that I will take some time to highlight later on is related to content management. And these updates would not have been possible without this breaking change. For example, things like file management will look a little bit different at Pro 3.0. They'll resemble a little closer to your Windows file management system. There's really nice features like the being able to drag and drop files, hover tips, better copy path experience. So these are all little things that I'll highlight a little later on in the presentation. And the other thing that I just wanted to highlight here too is that they've also changed the document storage format from XML to JSON. And that's going to break documents going backwards, which leads me to the second question that, you might be asking yourself, what do I need to do in order to prepare for this update? What considerations should I make before I make that transition, make that upgrade? So the first one is that this can be a little bit of a gotcha, is that Pro doesn't necessarily package the .NET framework as part of the installer. So when you install ArcGIS Pro, there is an additional step that you'll need to take. You'll need to install the .NET 6 runtime, desktop runtime separately. If you skip this step, you won't be able to install Pro. It's not a big deal. You'll get a message like this one, just letting you know, hey, you need to make that additional install before proceeding. Additionally, if you run ArcGIS Pro on concurrent licenses, you will need to update the ArcGIS License Manager to ArcGIS License Manager 2022 before upgrading to Pro 3.0. And that is available in my Esri. The second point, and this is, I think, a really big one to consider. I think this is where the major change will affect a large portion of you, is when it comes to sharing and collaboration. So if you are someone who works with a team, you're collaborating a lot, you're moving a lot of projects around, you've got a lot of different people working on projects together, this change will likely affect you. You definitely don't want to have part of your collaboration group working within the 2.x major release and then have some people move over to the 3.x version. It'll just work better for a team to upgrade together. What will make collaboration difficult is that projects that are created or saved at ArcGIS Pro or in ArcGIS Pro 3.0, they can't be opened directly in ArcGIS Pro 2.x, whichever smaller version you're at. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's impossible to collaborate. You do have the ability to package your projects. And so packaging allows ArcGIS Pro 3 users to share projects with 2.x users. But keep in mind that that collaboration workflow is not seamless for everyone involved, and it's just better to work all within the same major version. So we do encourage that teams coordinate their update, so everyone is working, like I said, within the same major release. Once you have updated to ArcGIS Pro and when you save a project created in an earlier version, you will receive a message. It's posted here on this slide, and it's just letting you know that this project was created in a previous version of Pro. So if you save this project in Pro 3.0, you won't necessarily be able to reopen it or go back. In terms of publishing services, you can use Pro 3.0 to publish to older versions of ArcGIS Enterprise. Similarly, you can also use Pro 2.9 or an earlier version to publish to Enterprise 11. So the recommendation is to use the latest version of Pro with the latest version of Enterprise. But again, sharing and collaboration is still possible within the two major releases. It's just that it adds maybe a few extra steps. And then finally, the last point in terms of what you need to maybe do to prepare, users that may be most impacted also by this change are those that are doing add-in development or creating add-ins. Since the biggest change for this major release has happened in the development environment, you will need to reconfigure and recompile your add-ins. So with that, we'll just see if there's any questions that have come in. And so one of the things that I have been asked in the past is, can I still import MXDs to ArcGIS Pro 3.0? Does that change anything? Does that workflow change at all? And there's no changes. You can still import your MXDs at Pro 3.0. The option to import MXD within Pro is still available. You shouldn't have any issues. Another question that I have received is, do my Python scripts need to be updated as well? They do not, but you do need to update the CIM. So there is documentation explaining what exactly you need to consider during that migration period. And that document, that blog post will be featured in one of our later slides. So with that, that's like your kind of overview of why this is considered a major change. That's kind of like the logistics behind why this is what makes 3.0 3.0. There are a few enhancements, so we're going to kind of move over to what new enhanced and enhanced features Maggie and I are most excited about.
Thanks, Emily. So yeah, we've seen now what a major release is, and we can take a look at what's new to ArcGIS Pro aside from that. Just a reminder to everyone as we're going through the new enhancements and features, just to post your questions in that Q&A that you should have access to at the bottom of the Zoom meeting so that we can get to those questions at the end of the session, and then we'll be able to answer those for you. Just put those in the Q&A so that we have a chance to see them. And yeah, so we know about major release, what that means. We want to look and see what's new. With this release of ArcGIS Pro, there have been many exciting new enhancements, including over 50 ideas from the Esri community page. So a real emphasis has been on adding your suggestions and ideas and making workflows a little bit easier for people to use and go through. We can't cover everything, but we've highlighted some of our personal favorites to show you today. And watch out for any features with the little light bulb icon next to them. Those are the ones that came from your ideas. So we wanted to highlight that, and you can see your ideas and suggestions in action in the software. Let's get started with analysis and geoprocessing changes. Not everything that was added to the software is our new tools, but there are some long-awaited enhancements here that make the software just a little bit easier to use. Small changes that'll make a big difference in your daily workflows. One of the first ones is the selection and filtered input notification. You can see an example of what that looks like on the screen here. But now at ArcGIS Pro 3.0, if you have a selection or filter applied to your data and you go to run a geoprocessing tool, you'll be able to see that that filter is there, and it lets you know, just so that you're aware when you're running the tool ahead of time, there is a filter on the data and the output will be filtered, making your workflows a little bit easier and helping to eliminate any kind of error if you forgot a filter was applied. Another change is with the spatial joins. They can now be created without making a new feature layer. So previously, every time you did a spatial join, a new layer was made, but instead now you can also have them as a temporary join, similar to how tabular joins worked previously. So just giving you a little bit more control over your workflows. Tools that are activated from the ribbon will now also have an autofill memory for many of those tools. So if you contain the previously run settings. So if you are running, let's say, a calculate field with a fairly long SQL expression, and you end up having to run it again, you won't have to rebuild those expressions. It will maintain it in the memory, and you can just go ahead and run the tool again, making just, again, workflows a little bit easier. In data engineering, there's been a change made so that if you want to just have all of the fields added and calculated, you can do it in one simple click instead of having to select all the fields you want. Just one click and you'll get a total overview of all of the data in your feature. And finally, the default format for project toolboxes has been changed from the TBX that was the previous default to ATBX. This file format was introduced in ArcGIS Pro 2.9, and it allows for like faster running toolboxes. So, but it's just good to be aware that this is the default now. So, you know, when you're working with the projects, just keep that in mind. If you've used TBXs in the past, those would be read-only in ArcGIS Pro 3.0, but you can copy the contents out of them into an ATBX to bring them over to the new version. There's also been some additions to analysis and geoprocessing tools, some new features that didn't exist before that we're pretty excited to share. The first are the changes to this spatial analyst toolbox, two new sections of tools added here. The first is the calculate kernel density ratio tool, which calculates a spatially relative risk surface using two input feature data sets. Along with that, we also have 3 new hydrology and analyst tools that have been added to combine previous workflows where you may have had to use 3 or 4 tools to get your data set up. It's been condensed down to a single tool experience, so you can work with that data in more simple way without as much pre-processing in your workflows. In the spatial statistics toolbox, you'll find the new multi-scale geographically weighted regression, or MGWR, tool. This tool is built on the previous geographically weighted regression, and it is a local form of linear regression that models spatially varying relationships. You can see in this image here the comparison between the results of the new MGWR versus GWR, or geographically weighted regression, of the previous tool, just showing you that you're going to get a little bit different results because of that varying spatial relationship for each of the input features. And finally, the export feature and export table geoprocessing tools give you more control over the data, that the schema of your data. You can change field order, data type, and row order for your output data sets, just giving you a little bit more option to have control over your features. Along with analysis and geoprocessing, there's many exciting additions to mapping and visualization. One of my personal favorites is the color vision deficiency simulator that's been added, which allows you to check your maps, scenes, layouts, and reports against 3 common color vision deficiencies, which will help create a more accessible product for your end users. You now also have the ability to clear your display cache after every time ArcGIS Pro is closed. So if you're working with those larger, heavier features and find that your cache is getting quite large very quickly, instead of having to go in and manually clear that cache every once in a while, you can set it to auto clear after Pro is closed, just again, making the program run a little smoother for you. Another big enhancement, a lot of requests for this one, is maps in reports. If you've been working with ArcGIS Pro reports in the past, you know that that was just for the attribute data, but now you can include maps in those reports as well, creating a better and more readable output. If you're exporting products, the export presets have been added. So there are pre-configured settings for exports, and you can also set your own settings. If there's a type of export you're doing regularly with specific configuration, you can save that and share it amongst products and projects to make that process a little bit smoother. And then for people who are working in that 3D world, we have 2 exciting changes, especially this first one, the addition of royalty-free worldwide OpenStreetMap 3D data. Through the Living Atlas, you can access this resource, its buildings and trees for everywhere in the world. So if you're interested in getting started with 3D, but you don't have access to that data, this OpenStreetMap 3D data is available to you. And with that, there's the addition of thematic trees. So if you've used 3D before, you know that there was the photorealistic tree option, and now thematic trees are available as well, giving you more options when making those scene outputs. So let's take a look at some of these new features in action in ArcGIS Pro 3.0. We have this project here, and today, let's say you're working for the city of Montreal, and you've been tasked with adding some additional cooling centers. So with all the recent heat waves that have been occurring and extreme heat events, a lot of people are sort of succumbing to heat-related illnesses, and there's the risk of increased deaths associated with that, or increased just community harm. So we want to be able to mitigate that and add some more cooling centers in places that are needed and best reach those people. In your project, you have the cooling locations that already exist, as well as the neighborhoods in Montreal that show the current deaths due to heat-related illness. So we have that information. First thing we want to do is you want to get these cooling locations that were given to you as a shapefile into your file geodatabase, just for best practice, have everything in the same file geodatabase. We'll open up the data and see what they've given us here. We can see that it's the addresses, the location name, city, and the province. Not the best order. I think I'd rather have addresses second. So you can just click and drag that over. And now it's ready to be exported. So we're going to export the feature. And we can see there's a notification here that there's a filter on the data and only 22 of our records are going to be processed. So we don't want that, we want everything. And I can see in my table that nothing is selected right now. So something else is going on with this feature. Let's go and look in the properties. And there it is, a definition query has been applied. So you can just turn that off, say okay. You'll notice that the map's going to be updated now. There are 85 features in your table. And if we refresh the tool here, there's no longer a notification about the filter because the filter has been removed. So you can get going with that export. If we look at the fields, we can see that the order that I switched it to, where the location name is before the address, is maintained in this tool. So that new order will be respected when I export. And we also want to have the addresses rearranged in alphabetical order. So we can do that by, let's do location name, ascending, and we can export this. So it's going to go into our file geodatabase. And what we get added to the map, it's the same locations. We can get rid of our shapefile. And in the attribute table, we can see the reordered fields and the alphabetical order results. So perfect, we're ready to continue with the analysis. So we have our neighborhood information, and we've been given with that a couple of different demographic values about the communities that were identified as potentials for people being at risk due to heat. We can use data engineering, which was added in ArcGIS Pro 2.8. So that's a great tool to give us a sort of summary and help us explore our data. In 3.0, there's a button here, add all fields and calculate. And in one quick click, we have all of our fields. We can see the distribution of the data, as well as some key statistics of the features that we have. For today's analysis, we know we have the deaths due to heat-related illness, but we also have the population of individuals 85 and older, population living alone, percent of green space coverage in each neighborhood, and the percentage of the population who are unemployed. So this data engineering can give us an idea of the data that we're seeing, but it doesn't tell us about the relationship. It doesn't let us know if these variables are related to the death rate that we're noticing. So we can use our new multi-scale geographically weighted regression tool to help answer the question of relationship. Let's get that tool opened up here. And it did already run it earlier just so that we could save some time. But if we fill it out, we would want to put our dependent variable as the percentages of deaths due to heat-related illness. And our explanatory variables are those 4 variables we just noticed. So population 85 and older, percentage of people living alone, percent of green space coverage, and the population of unemployed individuals. And we can set our neighborhood type. We would like to do a number of neighbors. So in more dense areas, there's going to be more neighbors, in less dense, less. And we're going to use the golden search ratio. You can read more about these different parameters in the tool documentation, but that's what we need for now. And like I said, I already ran this tool, so the output is actually already on our map. We can see that there are a number of different features that are added. It's one feature layer with different visualizations. But before we get into that, we want to take a look at the messaging from the tool, because there are some important messages in here that we can take a look at. There's a few tables that are included in the messaging, and if you're using an older version of ArcGIS Pro, you might notice that the messages are a lot cleaner. This is a newer addition to ArcGIS Pro from 2.8. We'll see the cleaner messaging, a little easier to interpret with these tables. But in this document here, we want to take a look at model diagnostics. This is going to tell us how well this model fits our data. And in this case, it also will compare the new MGWR to the geographically weighted regression, or GWR. Our model here, we're seeing a higher R squared value. So it's a better fitting model with this GWR than with the MGWR than with the previous version. And we're also seeing a lower AIC value. So again, that is indicating a better fitting model here. The key difference between these two tools, the new tool, what makes it different and special is that it has the bandwidth or neighborhood size. It can vary between the different variables. So if you're using the GWR, you're going to get a bandwidth that applies to all variables in the same way. And that's a neighborhood that it was calculated for 47 in the neighborhood size or bandwidth size. With this new tool, each of the different variables are assessed differently, and they can be determined as global, regional, or local scale variables. We can see that the population of people 85 years of age or older is actually considered a global variable and is using all 91 features in that bandwidth size versus the other 3, which are local variables. So this is a way that this tool can give you a better prediction or a more accurate prediction of your data because it has more variability in that neighborhood or bandwidth size. So let's take a look at what we can see on our map. We'll look at the different significance and coefficient values just for time. If you want to take a look at some of the more detailed parts of this, it's all outlined in the documentation, but we'll see here the first variable that we use, which I've also opened up on its own map, just so you can see table of contents a little more cleanly. We have the significance and coefficient for the population of 85 and older and its relationship to the death rate due to heat-related illnesses. We can see that this is a significant relationship. There's none of the hatch marking in our feature, and this orange color indicates that it's a positive relationship. So where we're seeing a higher percentage of individuals who are 85 and older, we're also seeing a higher number or higher percentage of deaths due to heat-related illnesses. And we can see some different types of trends for each of our 4 variables. When we look at individuals living alone, there are insignificant areas. Now we have positive and negative relationships. So on the eastern side of the city, we're seeing the positive relationship. Larger number of people living alone is seen at the same time as a higher number of deaths due to heat-related illnesses. And on the western side, we're seeing the negative, the purple color, negative relationship. So where there's more individuals living alone, we're actually seeing less deaths due to heat-related illnesses. We can also look at our percent of green space coverage. This one, not a lot of significant areas. So even though we do have one neighborhood with significance and it's a negative relationship, so more green space is seen with less heat-related illnesses and deaths. This is not a very significant variable, so maybe we need to reconsider what we're including in our analysis and not include green space because it's not as important as we might have originally thought. And then finally, we have the population of unemployed individuals where, again, many areas of insignificant relationship, but where it is significant, it's a positive one. So more unemployed people, individuals we're seeing associated with more individuals who have passed from heat-related illness. With those different areas of overlapping significance, I was able to sort of select out different feature places where we figured that maybe we need to put a little bit of our effort. So gone through, found the areas where there is a significant positive relationship, and then found where they had the highest of each of those 3, age over 85, persons living in single family homes, and unemployment. This is just going to give us an idea of where to get started in placing those new locations. And so with this new knowledge, I want to share it with my colleagues so we can make this decision together about where we should be putting these cooling locations. And first way to do that is with a map. So we've got a map created here that shows this, this output with our highlighted locations, and it also shows our different coefficient and statistical significance layers so people have more context. Before I share it with my colleagues, I want to make sure it's accessible to as many of them as possible. So you've got the new color vision deficiency simulator for ArcGIS Pro 3.0. We can select this and turn it on for 3 common color vision deficiencies and see how it's going to change the way our layout looks for people who experience those deficiencies. We can see that the map doesn't look great with these colors. The water's pretty hard to tell apart from the land, and some of the points kind of blend in together. So let's go back into the map And we can open up a second copy to compare it with itself. We'll get another copy of the map opened up. And we can get, for one of them, we'll turn on the color vision deficiency simulator because it does work in maps, layouts, reports, scenes. It works all across the board in Pro. And we can see, yeah, definitely these colors aren't really working. So let's make a change. Change the color to the yellow to red scale here. Okay, a little bit better. So now you can definitely see the difference between the water and the land, and the points stand out a little bit more clearly against the background. You don't see the difference in color, but you do see that the darker color is the red is a darker color concentration and the yellow is that lighter color. So I think this one's gonna work. We'll check against our other efficiencies. Looks okay, just maybe that red isn't great for around the areas that we've identified. So let's change that color as well. Okay, so it looks like things are a little bit clearer with this. We can go ahead and stick with these colors and we can see that they've been applied to our map, just giving a little bit better visual experience for everyone. Last thing we might want to do is share our results through a report. So we have a report set up. We know that we want to share the numbers that we've seen, but with ArcGIS Pro 3.0, you can get maps in these reports. You can add a map to the header that will be a static map. It just gives an overview of our area. If you right click and activate it, you have control over where the map is showing. You can change the zoom level and the centering, however you'd like it to look. And then in the body of the report, you can add maps as well. These ones are dynamic. So as the report page changes, as does the map that the centering of the map. So it will highlight where the report is emphasizing in that specific location. We can take a look at this report. I've already exported it out, so you can take a look and see what that's going to look like once it's been printed. And you can see we have our map in the header and then maps in the body that center on the location. So if you aren't familiar with the name of the neighborhood, seeing it on the map just gives you that additional context and makes this a more valuable report for sharing those results. And that's some of the first things that we wanted to share with you in ArcGIS Pro 3.0. I'm going to hand it back over to Emily now, who is going to continue on with some exciting new features.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. I do really love the color deficiency tool. I think it's such a handy tool. So with that, what I wanted to cover was stuff related to data management, just general like settings, a bit of editing and publishing. I mentioned this a little earlier, but a lot of the enhancements related to data management, this is where a lot of the new features and enhancements at Pro 3.0 really come through and shine. So there are a few things that I will highlight in a little bit. At first, I just wanted to say, so some of the new features, time-aware standalone tables. So if your standalone tables in a map or a scene can be filtered, they can be filtered by time and a range if they have the appropriate attributes. So when the time or the range property is set in the table's properties, table rows are filtered according to the time or the range slider in the map as you slide it. You also have the ability now to estimate credit consumption. This is before you can run tools like geocode address or maybe reverse geocode. Tools when the active portal is ArcGIS Online and you're using the ArcGIS World Geocoding service. Then in terms of editing, there are a few different options or new enhancements related to editing. We have a blog post and documentation listed at the end of our slide deck with a list of all of the new editing functionalities. But one that I think is quite nice is that the divide tool has a new parameter for specifying repeated lengths. And then in terms of different catalog enhancements, this is related to data management. You have the ability to really easily show in this show in file explorer option. So you can you easily find your data sets, your files in your Windows file explorer from within ArcGIS Pro. You also have an improved copy path experience. So you can copy an item's path and easily just plug it into your Windows File Explorer, find the data that you're working with. There's the drag and drop tooltips that we'll see. You've got a little bit of an example on the right-hand side. The tooltips are usually specific to the action that you are doing. You're moving to a specific maybe featured data set. This is just kind of making working with your data a little bit smoother. And then another feature that is quite nice, I'll show this in a bit more detail, is you can provide a file that maybe is used in a bunch of different projects. You can provide a file alias that maybe matches the specific project. Again, data management, it won't break the underlying path because it's being used in a bunch of different projects. So I'll show that in a bit more detail. Then in terms of sharing, a big enhancement has to do with web scenes. So this is a feature that you've been able to, this is something that you've been able to do in Pro with web maps for a while now, but now you can save web scenes in ArcGIS Pro. So what that means is you can update an existing web scene in ArcGIS Pro, and then you can access it in ArcGIS Online or your portal. You can also publish, this is for those that maybe work with voxel data, you have the ability to publish a voxel scene layer in a local scene to ArcGIS Enterprise or any kind of later version. Then this is these two updates are also pretty significant. I think that these, for those of you that work with Python, work with different Python packages, you might appreciate the kind of redesigned look. So the Python Backstage has been renamed the package manager. And it allows you to manage your different Conda environments for use within ArcGIS Pro. This page supports the upgrade of your Conda environments that maybe you've created in a previous version of ArcGIS Pro. You can repair maybe the broken environment, you can update it. And as those updates are being made, you can keep track of a kind of task queue. So you can keep track of the update. And then another big change, this is noticeable right when you launch ArcGIS Pro, that start page is also gotten a bit of a refresh. It's been redesigned so that your experience of searching through and managing your projects is maybe a bit more efficient. And there are learning resources that have been added and incorporated directly within your start page. So if maybe you have colleagues that are transitioning from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, from within that Learn page, there are different learning resources that are dedicated to that migration. If you're just new to Pro in general, there are also a lot of great resources about just getting started with ArcGIS Pro. Now, we won't have time to cover this today, but we wanted to just make an honorable mention. If you attended the Esri UC, there was quite a bit of talk about ArcGIS knowledge. So this allows you to, it provides just an entity-centric approach to data modeling and analysis. It's not necessarily about data on a map, but maybe the relationship between spatial and non-spatial data. Since we don't have time to cover it today, you can definitely email us and we have some resources to share related to ArcGIS knowledge, which does require a specific server. So with that, I am going to just pop over to ArcGIS Pro. And the first thing I wanted to do is we're going to start right from the beginning in our ArcGIS Pro start page. And as you can see, it's been refreshed to provide a richer launch experience. So at the top right here, you'll see that I've got my avatar. When you're signed into your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise account, your profile image will appear at the top right. There are different tools that have been provided to help you find your different projects. So I could search through recent projects that I've worked through. I can sort through by name or maybe modified date. I can pin the projects that I work with most often. I also have the ability to right click and maybe remove a project from lists. The Show and File Explorer option is a menu option that we'll see once again later on. So you can just find it in your Windows Explorer if that's necessary. And you can also clear that recent projects list if you need to. If we head over to the Learning Resource page, you'll see that we have some quick start tutorials as well as some discovery paths. And like I mentioned, if you or someone is transitioning over from ArcMap, there are a few resources related to kind of that transition and that migration process. So again, they're just making these different tools, these different tutorials, resources, maybe just they're putting them a bit closer to the forefront. We'll head over to our settings tab because I just wanted to show you that package manager and what that new package manager experience looks like. So what I can do is I can activate a new environment from this drop-down menu. I'll go ahead and open up my environment manager. If I had added a bunch of different packages, this is where you would see it in this list here. What I can do is I can review, easily see, which environment is initialized and active. I can also, rename, clone, repair, and upgrade my different packages. And as I was mentioning earlier, while you are doing those tasks, you do get a task queue that pops up and you can keep track of the progress. So with that, I'm going to head over into my project. There we go. So I'm just doing a simple, we'll see it in a second, a simple watershed analysis. And previously, when we were working and doing, maybe some watershed analysis, working with hydrology tools, the task was maybe a bit more, it required a few additional, not additional, but it required a few steps, essentially. Maybe it was like a 3-step approach. But now with we'll just go ahead and take a look. It's not there, but here. Within the hydrology tool set, you do have some new tools, and this is how I was able to create those streams or those flow lines using those new tools. And so these are part of the hydrology tool set. And what it does is it just kind of limits the amount of pre-processing using a DEM for those kinds of workflows. Now within this watershed, I did want to geocode some points, and I wanted to highlight some of the enhancements related to geocoding that I did mention. So I've opened up the tool, and when I select the ArcGIS World Geocoding Service, and I've provided all of the necessary, inputs, I've selected that CSV, I have the ability to estimate the different credits. So it's telling me there's about almost 84 credits that are going to be consumed if I geocode that entire CSV. It's quite a bit. So I might want to review, my CSV file and maybe limit the amount of features that will actually be geocoded. So this estimate credit option is available in the geocode table tool, as well as the reverse geocode table tool. So to be able to maybe make an edit to that CSV file, I'm going to open up my catalog pane, and I have a folder connection where that CSV file is located. Just like in our recent projects list, I can also show, open up that CSV in File Explorer and easily just track it down, maybe make the appropriate edits so that I can geocode that table. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention, I've got this folder connection that has been made. I've got a few files in there that are actually used across a few different projects. And I would like to rename it. Previously, if you renamed the folder, it could break the file path in your data connections in other projects where that folder is saved or is being used. So what I can do is just provide an alias for that folder. We see here that it's, if we hover over it, you'll see that it doesn't change the underlying name of the file or the folder. It just provides an alias. So it just maintains integrity across the different projects where that folder or those files are being used. Now, if I just expand my file geodatabase within which I'm working, wanted to just showcase how you can drag and drop your files. So that tooltip provides, a little bit of info about what you're trying to achieve, and you can just easily move your feature classes from, maybe one file geodatabase to another if it's necessary. Now, this feature class population change is not being used in this current map or any of my maps, but I do want to review the attribute table and see if it's something that I'd like to work with. So I don't necessarily need to add my that feature class to a map to view the attribute table. What I can do is just open that table. We'll give it a second. It's not being added to my map, as you can see, but I can review the table, make any kind of, maybe edits. Maybe I want to do some data engineering, but again, I don't necessarily need to add that table to a map to be able to view the attribute table. Now, before I head back to my slides, I just wanted to mention in a catalog view, one of the enhancements, and this was highly requested, was the ability to sort by file size. So as we can see, this feature class here is the one that is my largest feature class. I can also sort by date modified. So this, the hydro stations within the Yamaska watershed, that's the feature class that I last updated. So again, this is kind of an overview of the different enhancements that have been brought to ArcGIS Pro 3.0. A lot of really great stuff. But what I'm interested in hearing, based off of all of the different tools and enhancements that Maggie and I have shared over the last little bit, we'd like to hear what enhancement you are most interested in. So you should see there we go, a little quiz pop up in a few seconds. We'll give you a few seconds to kind of fill that out. And then we'll see which one. Maggie, which one are you most interested in or most excited about?
I really like the catalog stuff that you were showing before, but I think my personal favorite is still the color vision deficiency simulator. It's really great to see the ArcGIS Pro team including a little bit more accessibility features into the product. So I'm pretty excited about that one. Yeah, no, I do love the color vision deficiency simulator too. I have to say the different catalog enhancements are definitely my favorite. Just the ability to really easily navigate to your files. So let's see, it looks like the improved catalog functionality is definitely one that people are very interested in, color vision simulator as well. So thanks again, guys, for participating. So before we finish off, there are a few common questions that we just wanted to go over.
And just, these might answer questions that have remained. So I'm going to pass things over to Maggie.
Yeah, so we've gone over what's new, and we do know that some people will still have questions about specifically the collaboration aspect and sharing with ArcGIS Pro 3.0. So the first question we've identified is, do I need a specific version of ArcGIS Pro to publish to a specific version of Enterprise or ArcGIS Online? And the answer for that is going to be no, you do not. While it is recommended that you use the latest version of ArcGIS Pro with the latest version of ArcGIS Enterprise, you can use ArcGIS Pro 3.0 to publish to older versions of Enterprise. And likewise, you can use older versions of ArcGIS Pro like 2.9 and other supported versions to publish to Enterprise 11 if you have that. However, publishing can be downgraded with some of the newer content. So it is recommended that you use ArcGIS Pro 3.0 with Enterprise 11, but not required. And you can publish to ArcGIS Online with any version of ArcGIS Pro. That shouldn't be a problem. Our next question is, will service definition files created in ArcGIS Pro 3.0 work with all enterprise versions? And the answer is yes. When you're creating that service definition with the server connection information, the SD file will contain content that matches the server version. If you're creating an offline service definition, like you can see on the screen capture here, you are able to select the version of Enterprise. So you should be able to select Enterprise 11 or Enterprise 10.9.1 or earlier. And you also have an option for ArcGIS Online as well. So that should not be a problem. Oh, Emily, I can't hear you.
Are you having trouble hearing me by any chance?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, sorry guys. So just to go over, I flashed the answer to that question that I asked. So just to answer that question, you can still publish existing service definitions to ArcGIS 11. And if you create an SD file from a map authored with something new at Pro 3.0, maybe you've included new symbology or something like that, your content might just appear slightly downgraded if you publish the service definition to an earlier version of Enterprise. Now, the final question, can I still share web layers and publish services using Python in Pro 3.0? So you can still automate sharing web layers and services with Python. That shouldn't be an issue. If you want to create an offline service definition, you can use the offline target property. You can use this offline property to specify a server version when you create an offline service definition. And the offline service definition will contain content compatible with your portal, your standalone server and or ArcGIS Online. You can create multiple service definition files if you need to publish to a different server version. Okay, so those are the questions that we kind of wanted to make sure we answered. This is the actual final question. What should you do before upgrading? I'll let Maggie answer that.
Yeah, so we've seen what's available with ArcGIS Pro 3.0, and we hope you're excited to give these new tools a try. And there's a lot of great stuff to get trying, but we just want to make sure to remind you of these few things to remember before you decide to upgrade your setup. The first thing is to plan and test your workflows. Make sure that your add-ins, models, and projects are all still working as expected before upgrading your whole system. It's always a good practice to just make sure you do that planning and testing ahead of time. Next is to create backups. We want to encourage you to create backups of your projects or create project packages just to allow an easier collaboration process with colleagues who may still be at ArcGIS Pro 2.x. Finally, then we want to encourage you to work with your organization whenever possible. Having everyone in your organization upgrade to the same latest version will help with eliminating any of those issues of compatibility that might arise. So want to encourage that sort of collaboration with your team. And then finally, we want to remind you to take advantage of new functionality. It is recommended to have ArcGIS Pro 3.0 working with ArcGIS Enterprise 11, although not required. ArcGIS Pro will work fine with our previous versions of Enterprise, but you might lose some of that newer functionality. So if you have the opportunity, consider working with ArcGIS Enterprise 11 in your organization. Everything we've covered today and much more can be found in this large series of blogs and documentation. We're going to share this with you so you'll be able to access these resources. And I definitely suggest you take a look at some of these if you're considering making that upgrade to 3.0, but you want to have a little bit more information before doing that. A lot of great resources are available to you here. This summer, we'll also have some additional training courses that are coming up. The next summer school session is going to cover ArcGIS Insights, and that's available on August 25th. So if you want to learn more about ArcGIS Insights, go ahead and watch that, participate in that seminar, that webinar. It'll have a lot of great information for you. There's also the Back to School with ArcGIS program for educators in the GIS world who want to brush up on those skills. That'll be available on August 30th. Finally, we have an ongoing training course that's available with a couple sessions throughout the summer, the Migrating from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro course. This is a 2-day course that will help you with making that transition from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. I personally did take this course when I started working here and had been a long-time ArcMap user. It definitely gave a lot of tips and tricks to getting comfortable with Pro if you're someone who hasn't used it much. So I highly recommend the course if you have any sort of hesitation about moving to Pro from ArcMap. And then we have just want to remind you that we did record today's session, and the session will be available on our Esri Canada resources page, which is linked here and sent out to you as well. However, if there's anything that you wanted to discuss with us that we weren't able to cover or that we did cover, and if you had more questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or Emily. Our emails are on the screen, so you can send us an email with any questions or if you wanted to have a discussion about what we've shown today. And finally, thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Hopefully you learned something new about ArcGIS Pro 3.0 and what it has to offer. And hopefully you're confident when your organization is ready to make that move. So thanks again. All right, so now we have some time